seminar. And I try to be as short as possible. Just I would like to tell you some words about the past, and obviously I cannot tell you about the whole past of Polish Indology and Sanskrit studies. So I have decided just to make it short as possible. As we all know, India, since ages, was a land of great interest to the Europeans. The situation was similar in Poland, even if the representatives of Polish society were not among the very first ones who have visited India and who have left any written reports. While India is concerned, Sanskrit as a language and its literature was always the topic of the utmost interest. Polish intellectual circles of modern times started to be informed on the existence and importance of Sanskrit in the cultural history of the world, which I want to stress, in a detailed way in the 18th century, even if some less detailed information were already here in Poland. Bearing in mind that I have only 20 minutes to describe Polish way to discover Sanskrit, I have decided to choose only 4 examples of the maybe most important, at least important endeavors to do so. Obviously, these endeavors were connected with people who tried to do their best, having the access to sources available at the times of their lives. I would like to mention here only 4 names, which are significant for the consecutive steps which brought us to the contemporary situation of research as described by Halina. This means I will try to shortly describe what the past has brought to the future in terms of knowing your ancient culture, splendid culture of India. Already here, I would like to add that whereas in the past the information on Sanskrit as passed to Poles depended on the results of the works of individuals, now in the most important universities, as was already mentioned, there are Indology centers. In Warsaw, Wrocław, Poznań universities, there are these university centers. But there are also individual scholars interested in the research on India in general and Sanskrit in particular in many other scholarly institutions, and I think not only in scholarly institutions. Sanskrit is of interest not only for linguists, but also for widely understood philologists, ethnographers, anthropologists, etc. As we all know, regardless of what was done in the field of discovering India by the first travelers and missionaries, we may state that the first modern information on ancient India culture came from the people connected with the activities of East India Company. The role of Asiatic Society of Bengal was always and still is of the utmost importance for the exchange of information between India and Europe, and thanks to it also to Poland as a part of Europe. So I will now try to describe and tell you some words about these 4 Poles who brought information on Sanskrit in particular. One of them was Count Kazimierz Czartoryski, who lived between 1734 and 1823, who, due to the possibility of being for some time in the direct contact with famous William Jones, was definitely one of the people who enabled the spread of first information on Sanskrit among the intellectual circles of Polish society already at the turn of 18th and 19th centuries. During his travels in Europe, he has made direct contacts with the ones who had already been fascinated by Orient and its literature. The diplomat Count Charles Rewicki was the one to contact Czartoryski with Jones, whom he knew since a long time. Rewicki enabled and helped Czartoryski to get in letter contact with the co-founder of Asiatic Researches. As it is widely known, the Asiatic Researches immediately became a splendid source of information on India in Europe. The same in Poland. The possibility of an access to this journal enabled intellectual public of Poland to discover Indian past. Even if there was not a lot of examples or samples of Asiatic research or volumes of Asiatic researches, still it was very important source of information. The mansion of Czartoryski was for years one of the important centers of meetings and debates among intellectuals of many kinds, including poets, writers, philosophers, and politicians. The ideas disputed there were of such importance that later they often became the germ of discussions also in other intellectually important places in Poland. The motto, which can be found in Puławy on one of the buildings, which became the first museum of valuable historical objects, may also be applied to something which we can call the Museum of Ideas. And the motto sounds as follows: the past to the future. It is now time to say some words about the person who dared, and I stress it, the person who dared, to write the first books on Indian ancient culture, and in particular on Sanskrit grammar. This was Walenty Skorochut Majewski, who lived between 1764 and 1835. Majewski was connected with the activities of the Royal Warsaw Society of the Friends of Sciences, and it was there where he gave his first lectures on Sanskrit. This was already between the years 1813 and 1816, which is more than 200 years. Soon his lectures were followed by the first book concerning Sanskrit and the second one, which was its much enlarged version and which has had a very long title. The beginning of it was the grammar, I like the title, the grammar of the language of ancient Scyths or rock mountaineers, Indo-Scythians, Indians, Buddhists, and Buddhists mentioned by Herodotus. That is, about Sanskrit, in other words, an accurate speech. The first one he based mostly on two works of the Croatian missionary Paulinus a Sancto Bartolomeo, who wrote them in Latin and published in Europe in 1790. So Majewski was very quick in knowing these books of Paulinus a Santo Bartolomeo. For the second book, Majewski enlarged the scope of sources, as he used information coming also, he mentions such scholars as Colebrook, Carey, Wilkins, Yates, Forsters, and others, as he calls it. He definitely was acquainted with these works, but it is not clear whether he read them in full. Definitely, he knew the works of French scholar Antoine de Chézy. The scope of authors, which he mentioned while describing his sources, shows that he was well oriented in scholarly literature of his times, which was written and published in Europe. However, judging from the content, and I must be sincere in describing it to you, judging from the content of his books, it should be said that he was an enthusiast rather than a scholar, and that he was a dilettante in many respects. Even if he signaled the importance of Sanskrit by the description of both language and short survey of its literature, the scholarly information was still to come. Sanskrit was not yet really discovered, but he was the first one who made efforts to give the information in Polish and to Poles. It is worth stressing here that Majewski used his own money to cover the expenses, and that he was the one who established the publishing house for the purpose of editing the book, And he himself prepared the fonts for Indian alphabets he used in them. His works are definitely part of the past, which is important for future and for modern times. The second person whom I have to mention here is Franciszek Ksawery Malinowski, who lived between 1807 and 1881, whom one can call the first who described the Sanskrit grammar in scholarly way. His book, published in 1872, entitled, I translate also the Polish title, Sanskrit Grammar as Compared with Old Slavic and Polish Languages, was based on the highly esteemed grammars by Franz Bopp, a famous European linguist. Malinowski himself, also a linguist, not only translated parts of books written by Bopp, but he added his own commentaries, some of which went deeper into the explanations of grammatical structures than in the Bopp's grammars. Malinowski grammar was not only of the descriptive kind. This is also, I think, worth saying, that it was not only of the descriptive kind, but he wanted to enable the Polish reader to get to know Sanskrit in order to read original text. And because of it, he tried to arrange his grammar partly in a way of a teach-yourself grammar. Many people think that kind of teach-yourself grammars were invented in 20th century, but it was Malinowski who did it already then. In this book, he included a short fragment from Nala and Damayanti story, which is 9th and 10th songs, let's put it like this, and he analyzed the grammar forms and gave his proposal of the translation. And maybe here is the best place to mention that the first translation of the whole story, made directly from Sanskrit, comes from 1885, and the author was Jan Leciejewski, one of the university Indologists. I would like to add also here that both Majewski and Malinowski were trying to compare Sanskrit with Slavic, and in particular Polish languages. Majewski tried to do it without the good knowledge of scholarly rules of comparativism, and he made a lot of mistakes in the examples he gave. On the other hand, Malinowski was a very good philologist, and he definitely used the scholarly methods to show the affinities of our languages. However, being much influenced by Pan-Slavism ideology, which is an intellectual movement according to which all the Slavic people create a unity, Malinowski tried to show that Sanskrit is in many respects similar to the languages of Slavs, and that they are what may be called nearest cousins. In this respect, his grammar was different from Bopp's, and he stated it openly in the introduction. The third person, from the scholarly point of view, the most important person I would like to mention today is the one who was already mentioned by my predecessor, Halina. The name of this person is Andrzej Gawroński, who lived between 1885 and 1927. In my opinion, he was the most outstanding Polish Indologist of the turn of 19th and 20th centuries, and the person whose works have not lost their value in modern times, and probably at least some of them still can influence future research. Gawroński was a man of many talents, out of which one was his extreme skill for languages. Already in his youth, he showed the interest in many different. If he showed an interest in different cultures, he always started to discover them by learning their languages first, which is not always the case with many of us. Already in his youth, he learned German, French, Greek, Latin, Italian, English, Spanish in his youth, Portuguese, German, Hebrew, and last but not least, Sanskrit. The famous linguist Jan Baudouin de Courtenay, who was then a professor of the Jagiellonian University, advised him on good Sanskrit grammars available then and advised him how to learn this grammar by himself. His colleagues and students, Gawroński's colleagues and students, certified that he altogether knew 60 languages, and Gawroński himself, while being asked about his command of languages, answered that he speaks and writes in about 40 languages and reads and understands in about 100. I have seen with my own eyes the notes he made on the margins of the books belonging to his private library, and often these notes were made in the languages of these books, which certifies his knowledge of languages. In many works of different nature, which covered not only linguistic but also literary matters, he showed his extraordinary skills and supported his thesis by the abundance of examples coming from this variety of languages. His memory was perfect. The text once read stayed in his mind. There are stories about his memory, but now I will take the thing short and I will not tell you all the stories I know. I just want to add one sentence that he had, during his studies, he had splendid professors. He was studied first at Lwów University and then at Leipzig University. And his areas of interest were really very broad, not only Indology or linguistic studies, but also history of art, Greek and classical philology, etc., etc. In Leipzig, he obtained his doctorate degree, summa cum laude, on the basis of the work dealing with Nitya-Katika and Dasha Kumara Charita. His academic career started when he was only 31, as he was nominated the professor of Sanskrit philology at Jagiellonian University in 1916. A year later, he moved to the Lwów University, Lwów was at this period a very important Polish city. So he went to Lwów as he was offered there the chair of linguistics, being 32. As he was recognized as an excellent scholar very soon, he was accepted as an active member by the very prestigious Polish Academy of Skills. Soon he was also a member of Société de Linguistique de Paris and Société Asiatique. His students and colleagues always stressed his enormous diligence and innovative of his works. But for sheer scholarly work, he was also devoted to popularization of Oriental studies and in particular of Indological studies. He was the co-founder of the Polish Oriental Society, established in 1922, which means 101 years ago, and its journal, Rocznik Orientalistyczny, which since then is one of the most important Polish Oriental periodicals. He also co-founded Polish Linguistic Society. The range of his literary works is also of great variety. They concern, but for the already mentioned, also such writers, just to name only a few of them, as Shudraka, Ashvaghosha, Dandi, or Kalidasa. The method he used while doing his research was often the one called stylometric, which was a novelty at his times. He often wanted to find the interdependencies and the relative chronology of the text. The results of his findings providing they were described in English, were recognized by his contemporaries from different European countries, and they are still respected by many scholars. His main domain was general linguistics. He thought that psychological aspect of the language should always be taken into consideration, regardless of the fact of its oral or written form. His position was a serious critique of Ferdinand de Saussure's theory of the static nature of the language, understood as a system of signs. His position was that the language should be seen in its individualist perspective and claimed that it expresses both rational and emotional side of each man. During his lifetime, he published many articles. Unfortunately, two important books of his were published after his premature death. He died of tuberculosis at the age of 42, and we can only think of what could have he write if he were to live longer. The first book was dealing with the origin of Indian drama and the question of Greek influences. He was of the opinion that drama's origin in is Indian rather than Greek, and this theory in his times was revelatory in Europe. The linguistic evidence gathered by Gawroński proved its soundness. And the second book he published is the book about which Halina already said some words. It is a Sanskrit grammar, and I will repeat some words about this grammar as I think it is one of the tools for future research on Sanskrit. And for our students, definitely, it is one of the most important sources of information. And for us, I think, because if I think about my own example, I'm reading and rereading his grammar, always finding something new in it. So this grammar is of a descriptive type. It has very, very clear construction, and since its publication, it is used not only by us and our students, but by all generations of Polish Indologists and other people who are interested in Sanskrit. Moreover, it is one of the very few sources of information on Sanskrit grammar for scholars of other disciplines, first of all, general linguists. It includes, and this is what I want to raise as a topic for possible discussion, that it includes a small Sanskrit-Polish dictionary, which is the only one available. I think that Sanskrit-Polish dictionary is a huge edge till now, and maybe it may be one of the tasks for future scholars. It often happens that scholars of such outstanding, I'm coming back to Gawroński, of such outstanding achievements are forgotten. In Gawroński's case, one of the reasons that some of his crucial works came to oblivion is that they were written in Polish and never translated. It is not easy to answer the question why he decided to write them and publish in his own mother tongue. One fact is sure, he was a great patriot, so maybe this was one of the reasons, as his command of languages was as I described it. However, it is never too late, and probably such meetings as ours may become the beginning of cooperation in many fields, also in the field of the exchange of ideas coming from the past and influencing the future. Future research in the field of Sanskrit studies. I hope it will be so. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Iona. That was again a lot of information. Yes, thank you. There are a lot of information, and in fact, you highlighted the works and contributions of a lot of Polish scholars and Indologists who have helped to promote the Sanskrit language. And I like the idea of having a Sanskrit-Polish dictionary. Maybe someday it will be, created, and it will add to the importance of the Sanskrit language, and which is, of course, as you kept mentioning, has been its development, its advancement has taken place over the years. And I mean, I was really listening with interest about the various scholars, their individual contributions and the efforts they have put into develop this language. So, and I'm really thankful that you have made these observations and shared this with us today. So, thank you once again, and
Thank you.
yeah, so it was really thing wonderful. And in fact, when we plan to have a physical program in India in Kolkata, we must include the current ambassador of Lithuania to India. She is a Sanskrit scholar herself. I think she was a professor and then she became the ambassador. So I had the opportunity of interacting with her at a program at the Calcutta University. So we must get it. In fact, I was thinking about it, but then today, obviously, it's a different program. So maybe next time. Anyway, so with that, may I now request? Yes, please.
She is
Yes,
also welcome to visit the Asiatic Society.
yes, yes. I was seeing that photograph. Yes,
She is also
yes,
welcome to visit the Asiatic Society sometime.
yes. So, with that, now I request Professor Tapati Mukherjee, who is the Vice President of the Asiatic Society, Kolkata, and the President of the Sanskrit Sahitya Parishad, Calcutta. In fact, I know Tapati Di from Vishwabharati days when she was the Adhyakha of the Ravindra Bhavana in Vishwabharati University. Anyway, so again, in the interest of time, I would just request Professor Mukherjee to make her presentation. Her abstract is about kaleidoscope of Indic knowledge, repertoire as enshrined in Sanskrit knowledge and literature from the dawn of civilization. So over to you, Tapati. Thank you.
Thank you for your generous introduction. Honorable dignitaries, my erudite co-speakers, and the august audience who are encouraging us online. I feel myself honored and privileged to get this opportunity to present before you to share my views about this very interesting topic, that is cultivation of status of cultivation of Sanskrit in India and Poland. Without wasting time, I go to my topic. As has already been mentioned, the title of my presentation is Kaleidoscope of Indic Knowledge Repertoire as Enshrined in Sanskrit Knowledge and Literature from the Dawn of Civilization. And I will show you what Sanskrit was in India at the dawn of civilization and what it is now. It is not an archaic dinosaur, but it is a living reality which can act as a torch bearer in today's perspective too. Now let me start with a very basic question. What is Sanskrita? Etymologically meaning perfected, purified, polished, and highly elaborated, Sanskrit, according to linguists, stands for a product of Old Indo-Aryan branch of the Indo-European family. This has been aptly pointed out by our president of the Asiatic Society. But at the same time, in the discussion of Sanskrit language, one should bear in mind that Sanskritic languages, I repeat, Sanskritic languages, all languages originating from Sanskrit should also come under our purview. Sanskrit has been described, has been declared as a divine revelation by our ancient rhetorician Dandin. I take this opportunity to present in original Sanskrit of Dandin. Sanskrita nama daivi bak annakshata maharshivi. The concept of Sanskritic, all languages originating from Sanskrit, had also been taken care of by our erudite commentators when they declared that Sanskrit, when they declared Sanskrit as the source of Latin languages like Prakrit, Apabhrangsho, and other indigenous languages because of their underlying grammatical affinity with Sanskrit. In our ancient rhetorical text, the Natya Shastra of Bharata, you must have heard of it definitely, the term Prakrita has been used. The later grammarian Patanjali in his Mahabhashya has mentioned that each word has several apobhransha or correct forms. Ekaikasya sabdasya bahuvopobhransha. In Saraswati Kanthabharanam of Bhojadeva, mention has been made of poems composed in various languages like Sanskrit, like Prakrit, like Apabhrangsha, etc. Sanskrite naiva kalpyartha prakrite naiva chaparaha shakyo vachaitum kaschit apabhramshena va punah. So, what I want to emphasize is that Sanskrit and Sanskritic languages originating from Sanskrit are quite familiar in ancient India. It may be mentioned in this context that Sanskrit has two forms, we are all aware of it, that is Vedic and post-Vedic, which finally took shape of classical Sanskrit. Sanskrit has also been recognized as the language of cultured or refined people. Now, the point which should never be lost sight of in this discussion, that the scope or arena of Sanskrit language is extremely broad. Why? Because of the fact that side by side with Vedic and post-Vedic Sanskrit language dictated and polished by the grammarian Panini, Prakrit, Apabhrangsha, and other languages originating from Sanskrit also came under its purview. Even Pali, the language in which Lord Buddha preached his sermons, was in a specified form of Magadhi Prakrit, a variety of Prakrit, and linguist Geiger said Pali should be regarded as a form of Magadhi, the language in which Buddha himself had preached. Unquote. Apart from these varieties, having their root in Sanskrit, there is another very, very important language form, that is Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit. Though basically Prakrit in form, this is an example of Sanskritized Prakrit, which also come under the purview of Sanskrit language and literature. In the 8th chapter of his Prakrit grammar, Siddha Hemo Shabdanushashanam, the grammarian Hemochandra categorically traced the origin of Prakrit from Sanskrit. I quote, Prakriti Sanskritam Tatra Bhavam Tato Agatam Va Prakritam. He also stated emphatically that all grammatical features of Prakrit are similar to Sanskrit. As a matter of fact, due to inclusion of Prakrit words and sounds in Sanskrit, there were two processes simultaneously in operation: Prakritization of Sanskrit and Sanskritization of Prakrit. In the words of Professor Shishir Kumar Das, I quote, two tendencies are clearly visible. One shows an upward movement of folk to the elite, which can be called Sanskritization. The other shows a downward movement of the elite to the folk, which can be called desanskritization or Prakritization, unquote. As a matter of fact, as a result of these two processes simultaneously in operation, Prakrit became a spoken language of the millennium. Hence, Sanskrit language, what I want to emphasize, Sanskrit language and literature is not confined within the periphery of only Vedic or classical Sanskrit simply. On the contrary, it is the it includes in it a vast corpus of literature of later languages because of their origin from Sanskrit language. It is because of this huge and broad dimension of Sanskrit language that Prakrit has been used profusely in classical Sanskrit dramas. Shoroshini, Magadhi, and half Magadhi, Ardha Magadhi had been used by our erudite dramatist Ashwagosha in his works. Bhasha, another dramatist, used Shoroshini, Magadhi, and Ardha Magadhi, whereas Kalidasa's choice was Shoroshini, Maharashtri, and Magadhi. So once again I state and reiterate that Sanskrit has a very, very, very broad dimension starting from Vedic from 1500 to 2500 BC and including in it classical and at the same time Pali, Prakrit, Apabhrangsha and Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit. Apart from this linguistics broadness and importance, Sanskrit language and literature encompasses manifold branches of knowledge and as such considered as repertoire of ancient Indic knowledge. It is indeed amazing, we can just dream of it, that even in that very past, when civilization had just dawned, our seers could pronounce the deepest philosophical thought in the form of monism in the Rig Veda itself, Rig Veda 1:164:46. Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. Only one is existent, but people are expressing it in various ways. Even they tried to explore the mystery behind the creation of this cosmic world. That is also in the Rig Veda 10:129:6. Kovadva Veda, Kaiha Pravocha, Kuto Ajata, Kuto Yam Visrishti. Where from came this creation? Who created it? How was it created? This philosophical concept found its most mature impression in the Upanishads, which propounds the concept of universalism. One, just sarvani bhutani atmannevanupashyati sarvabhuteshu chatmanam tato no bijugupshati. This is from Ishopanishad, verse 6. One who finds himself embedded in the world and the world manifested in him do not have any chance to despise others. In the later period, our great epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, both composed in Sanskrit, which had nourished and nurtured Indian civilization throughout the centuries, though embodied in the form of story, teach basic ethical principles which make life worth living. What are they? Mutual love, fraternity, non-violence, abstention from theft, etc. The teaching of Gita, a part of the Mahabharata, can be adopted even nowadays under the present perspective too, as a technique of modern psychological counseling when it stated Tasmat aparihadyarthe natvam shochitum. Everything in this world is predestined, so one should not feel aggrieved because of temporary loss or misery or grief. In the yoga philosophy of Patanjali, recognized as one of the 6 philosophies of India, control of body and mind had been emphasized through 8-fold yoga. They are yama, abstinence, niyama, observance, asana, posture, pranayama, breathing, pratyahara, withdrawal, dharana, concentration, dhyana, meditation, and samadhi, absorption. Needless to say that these measures or techniques are relevant even in contemporary world, and it is for this reason that World Yoga Day is celebrated globally on 21st of June every year. Now, another thing which should deserve mention here, that taking clue from the Vedic seers who cherished a desire to live 100 years of life, Pashyemo Sharadashratam, Jivemo Sharadashratam. In the later Dharma Shastra area, side by side with framing code of conduct and legal principles for smooth progress of the society, our Dharma Shastras, enshrined in Sanskrit language, enunciated basic principles of hygiene, various kinds of food detrimental to our digestive system, and other basic rules of maintaining good health. So you are not averse to material life also. This awareness of hygiene and concern about various diseases gave rise to the science of Ayurveda, as has already been mentioned by our previous speakers, which is the precursor of modern science of etiology. What is etiology? The modern science, it has been defined as, I quote, a branch of medical science that deals with the cause and origin of disease, unquote. Ayurveda does the same thing. It is based on similar concept to find out the root cause of disease and suggest remedy accordingly. This has been done by our propounders of Ayurveda, Charaka, Shrushruta, etc. It is indeed amazing. You will be amazed to hear that epidemics like COVID, which has devastated the world a few years back, epidemics, their causes and remedies had also been taken care of in ancient Indian text, in Charaka Samhita, enshrined in Sanskrit. Ethics is a matter of concern for our predecessors. The Shukraniti Shara made it a rule for the monarch even to abide by the rule of Niti Shastra, thereby negating misuse of power by the monarch. Now, contrary to the assertion of Western scholars that ancient Indians, because of their extreme involvement of philosophy, were averse to material life and statecraft, contrary to this stands the Arthashastra of Kautilya, that is a monument of Indian polity. At the same time, similarly, ancient Indian archaeology had also reached its zenith. This has been substantiated by Sri Rajendra Lal Mitra, the first Indian president of the Asiatic Society, in his erudite articles refuting the view of Western scholars like Ferguson and others. What is most important is even environment was taken care of by our seers when Atharva Vedic priest, Atharva Vedic seer described himself as the son of Mother Earth, Mata Prithivi, Putroham Prithivya, signaling thereby that nature is an integral part of our very existence. Needless to say that Sanskrit literature had a very rich repertoire of poems, dramas written by Kalidas, Bhash, Bhavabhuti, etc. Now, in the medieval period, as has been aptly pointed out by our president, Sanskrit studies was rather neglected, and accepting the translation of Dada Shiko's accepting the translation of Upanishads by Dara Shiko, the Mughal prince, Sanskrit studies was rather neglected. It is a fact. But when this scenario changed with the reversal of role of British in India. What is the reversal of role? From traders to rulers, there emerged a new era when a band of young scholars led by Sir William Jones under the tutelage of the Asiatic Society established in 1784 took upon themselves the cudgel of unraveling the hitherto unexplored treasures described in Sanskrit language to the world. I repeat, unraveling the hitherto unexplored treasures enshrined in Sanskrit language to the world. For the first time, it was established that vast, unexplored Orient had much to contribute to the global knowledge scenario. The introduction of Sanskrit language and literature in the global perspective signaled the beginning of a new discipline, that is comparative philology. This has been pointed out by our General Secretary also in his introduction, when Jones, in his third annual discourse in the Asiatic Society, traced the affinity of Sanskrit with Greek and Latin, emphasizing, quote, emphasizing them, that is Greek and Latin, to have sprung from the same common source which perhaps no longer exists. Jones translated Abhigyana Shakuntalam of Kalidasa, legal text Manu Samhita. Wilson translated Kalidasa's Meghadutam. Charles Wilkins translated Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and many others. So it is now pertinent to mention here, that is another aspect also, that to implement good governance, British rulers like Warren Hastings was instrumental in formulating a code of law in tune with our ancient legal texts, with the assistance of 11 Sanskritist Pandits. These Pandits made a compendium in Sanskrit of legal code of law based on our ancient Indian code, and Halhead's translation of this code of law, Vivadharana Setu, was published in 1776 in London under the name A Code of Gentoo Laws, a general ordination of the Pandits. When William Jones came in the picture, he made a more elaborate version, Vivado Bhangarnava by Jagannath Tarko Panchalan, that was in 1796. And I am proud to announce that this formed the kernel of modern Indian jurisprudence. As a matter of fact, Tolls and Chatushpati, centers of Sanskrit learning, were prevalent in medieval India too, but it was not it could not get that amount of importance which it deserves. And at the same time, the one thing which must be mentioned in this context is that what is the importance of Sanskrit? Why should we retain it? We should retain it because Sanskrit has served as a unifying factor of the entire India amid several divergences throughout the centuries. Even under Muslim and British domination in 18th and 19th century, this bond of unity, implemented effectually by Sanskrit language, remained intact against a background of imperialism, provincialism, aggression, and many other factors detrimental to unity. How was it affected by Sanskrit language alone? Professor Shishir Kumar Das, in his History of Indian Literature, explained, I quote, certain ethical certain ethical principles and a theocentric worldview govern artistic creation. It is for this reason that Rabindranath Tagore, our greatest cultural icon, has stated in his essay, History of India, that India has never deserted anybody, whether be it a foe or a friend, but has amalgamated everyone under its own fold. And it is for this and the impact of Sanskrit language and literature vibrates till date in almost all regional literatures of India, that is Bengali, Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, Gujarati, Hindi, Assamese, Manipuri. All regional languages are impacted by India, impacted by Sanskrit. Now, what is the present condition of Sanskrit in India? In post-independence India, Sanskrit has been assigned a position of supreme importance. Despite there is a general apathy, I admit, despite a general apathy about the relevance of these ancient tenets in this jet-set globalized world, where change is the only constant. I repeat, in this jet-set globalized world where change is the only constant, where a few days back we have already seen our Chandrayaan traversing a long way to moon even and has landed safely in moon, then why should we take care of Sanskrit, which is an archaic language nowadays? Now, to this query, my answer is an emphatic yes. The fact remains that Sanskrit, though not used as a spoken language, has retained its seat of reverence in modern India. Sanskrit is one of the 22 official languages in India. There wasn't even an attempt to declare Sanskrit as national language of India on 11th of September 1949 by the then Law Minister Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Now, Sanskrit was placed in the 8th schedule and Article 351 of the Constitution of India. Several Sanskrit universities have been established throughout the length and breadth of the country. At least 2 states of India, Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand, have introduced Sanskrit as a compulsory subject in primary schools. More important is the fact that our premier academic institutions like Indian Institute of Technologies are trying their level best to adapt Sanskrit in computer technology, as Sanskrit had been considered as computer friendly. In the recently introduced National Education Policy 2020, Sanskrit has been declared to be offered at all levels of school and higher education as an important enriching option for students, including as an option in the 3-language formula. Another very important aspect of government policy towards Sanskrit is the drive. I draw your attention to this very pertinent point, is the drive to collect, collate, conserve and publish hitherto unpublished manuscripts which are otherwise a part of our ancient Indian knowledge trove. National Manuscript Mission had been set up with an avowed objective to preserve our manuscripts and focus them to substantiate the fact that Indic knowledge embedded in Sanskrit language and literature is simply unparalleled in its beauty, gravity, and depth. It was for this reason that our ancient manuscripts had been displayed in the prestigious G20 summit, will be displayed in the prestigious G20 summit before the dignitaries of various states and the Asiatic Society is proud to participate in this exhibition with display of our manuscripts. I come to my conclusion. Sanskrit is not an archaic dinosaur. It has its relevant in present perspective too, that I have shown already. In today's strife-torn, violence-marred world, when mutual distrust, disharmony, violence, erosion of values are threatening our very existence, the idea of fraternity, love, and universalism may bring, if we follow them, may bring some solace to our battered life. Sanskrit may act as a torch bearer to the ailing humanity. I conclude with a verse again from Rig Veda. Samano mantraha samiti samani samanang manaha sahachittamesham samanang mantram abhimantraeva samaneno vo havisha juhomi. Common be the prayer of these assembled worshippers. Common be the acquirement. Common the purpose associated be the desire. I repeat for you a common prayer. I offer for you with a common oblation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Tawati Mukherjee. I mean, again, that was really very intense, and there was, I just kept listening, and I wish I could understand every aspect of it, but I just noted down certain things, like the Sanskrit is the mother of many important languages, and your slokas were very, very heartwarming, and they're very in-depth and insightful, actually. And you talked about Sanskrit languages as being part of ancient India and has been recognized as a language of the refined people. So, and I like the concept of this Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit. Maybe someday I'll sit down and do some studying about it, and the relevance of Prakrit and its context to the Sanskrit, and how Sanskritization and Prakritization are interrelated. And again, Sanskrit has a lot of broad dimensions, and the initiatives being taken to publish manuscripts, ancient manuscripts, Sanskrit manuscripts of India that have been possibly lost in time. So again, with those thoughts, thank you very much, Professor Mukherjee. Thank you, Professor Halina. Thank you, Professor Iana. We have one more speaker, but we have actually run out of time. So, and I need to rush because of some medical exigencies. So, how would you like to do that, Dr. Chakrabarti?
Yeah. So, I will simply read out the abstract which was sent by Professor Bavulkar along with his letter, which you have received an hour before the program commenced, which says, "This is to convey you for the great regrets that I shall not be able to make my presentation at today's webinar due to ill health. I have been suffering from cold, fever, and throat infection. I feel extremely sorry for my inability because of this unexpected and sudden illness. I shall, however, send you my full paper in the near future if you plan to publish the proceedings of the webinar. I wish the webinar every success." With this, kindly allow me to read out the abstract which was circulated and we have received. So
Yeah, can I just interrupt for a minute, please? I need to excuse myself. As I said, I have a medical exigency, so I will kindly excuse myself. But again, thank you everyone for coming in, joining in, and sharing your valuable insights and the knowledge, which was very important, and there was so much gained actually out of this conference. So I will end with that. Dr. Chakrabarti, you please continue and conclude the thing, but I just need to leave actually.
Okay.
Thank you, Halina. Thank you, Professor Yana. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Carry on.
Thank you, Joy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
So I am now reading out the abstract of Professor Baulkar. The title of his presentation was Status of Cultivation of Sanskrit in India, Some Observations. As we all are aware, Sanskrit has a glorious past of at least 2500 years, since the time when the grammar of that language was prepared by Panini. This language has, however, a hoary antiquity, as it existed as a pre-classical, Vedic and post-Vedic language about 2 to 3,000 years back before Panini. The grammarians such as Patanjali followed Panini and insisted on the correct pronunciation of words and the use of correct expression in that language and emphasized the importance of Sanskrit. At that time of Panini, there existed a number of dialects of Sanskrit in Vedas. We can see a variety of expressions in the Vedic language. The variety marked the regional differences in the spoken Sanskrit. In the days of Patanjali, common people spoke in simplified Prakrit times. Sanskrit was a language of knowledge that included the study of Vedas, philosophical systems, sciences, and arts. The knowledge was for the sake of knowledge. The system preserved the vast span of knowledge mainly through the original tradition involving the Guru Shishya Parampara. Even today, this system exists in respect of some branches of learning. The changing political and social scenario caused a setback to the study of Sanskrit to a certain extent. However, the parampara continued in the traditional schools of Pathoshala despite the lack of majority of the teachers belonged to the Brahmana class who on one hand preserved the knowledge system with dedication, not expecting material gains, but kept the knowledge restricted to that class on the other. In the British colonial period, it was probably for the first time that the study of Sanskrit was open to all, irrespective of special efforts for cultivation of Sanskrit by providing financial assistance to schools, colleges, and universities, and by honoring Sanskrit scholars trained in the traditional as well as modern systems of education. The establishment of Sanskrit universities also encouraged young students to study this language. The Indian government also encourages foreign students and scholars by offering scholarships to them. The cultural relations between India and other countries are also instrumental in the cultivation of Sanskrit in India and abroad. It is true that the study of this language does not necessarily promise good livelihood and material gains comparing newly developing branches of education such as computer science, etc. However, the passion for studying Sanskrit and ancient Indian heritage continues. It is observed that the young generations is getting interested in the study of Sanskrit. The efforts to promote the study of Sanskrit are being made and will continue in future as well. This was the abstract that was circulated. And as per the program schedule that was also circulated, now some time is open for question answers. If among the participants online there is any specific question or query or anything to be retrieved from the speaker, please identify yourself and address your question to the particular speaker. Is there anyone online?
19 persons are there, including us.
So kindly raise your hand and put your question.
question of raising hand, but pushing the button.
We are not getting any response so far.
There's one.
Huh? Oh, yes, please.
If I may, I'm not sure if I am audible. Can you hear me?
Yeah?
My name is Lidia Sudyka. I belong to the same department as my colleagues Ivona and Halina.
We can't hear.
Well,
Yes, she is audible.
Oh, please carry on.
yes, okay. So I would like to mention the project which is ongoing in our department. It concerns modern Sanskrit literature. And as far as cultivation of Sanskrit in Poland is concerned, I think that it is a meaningful fact that the project was sponsored, is funded by Polish National Center of Science. So it's not a question, just a remark, but I think that's meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
What is the project about?
What is the project about? Our chairman wants to know.
Maybe, if not to take too much of your time, I will send in a moment a link to the website of the project. Of course, there will be more news there as time goes on. We started a few months ago, so now I am looking for the address, and in a moment I will try to send you. One moment. Chat.
Oh, okay. Any other response?
Here it is.
Yeah.
Done.
So, anybody else among the participants? If there is nothing as per the schedule, we
invite Nagunara to speak, say something.
Navanaran Achi?
Sure. That's it.
Navanaran Babu, you are there. Professor Navanaran Bandyopadhyay? No, I think he's not here. Okay then, if there is no more response or encounter, as per the schedule, we were to close by 16 hours Indian Standard Time and 12:30 hours as per CET there. So we have now one item left, that is the formal vote of thanks to be offered by our treasurer of the Asiatic Society, Professor Ashok Kanti Shannal. So, Professor Shannal, please.
Thank you, sir. Very good afternoon to everybody. Namaskar. Honorable Professor Shapan Kumar Pramanik, President of the Asiatic Society, Kolkata. Honorable Dr. Satyabrat Chakraborty, General Secretary of the Asiatic Society. All the honorable and distinguished persons from Poland, other distinguished persons who are participating online and offline, and the friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege for me, and I'm also happy to propose formal vote of thanks. It is very important webinar on status of cultivation of Sanskrit as a language in Poland and India, organized by the Asiatic Society in collaboration with the Institute of Oriental Studies in Krakow, Poland, and in association with Honorary Consulate of Poland in Kolkata. At the outset, I would like to express sincere thanks and gratitude on behalf of the Asiatic Society to the organizers from the part of the Poland for their intent desire to organize this very important webinar with the Asiatic Society. And we are very happy and proud to participate, to collaborate with this Institute of Oriental Studies for this webinar today. Honorable Mr. Mohan Goenka, Dr. Sebastian, who delivered inaugural address, who is the Church Day Affairs Ambassador Poland, New Delhi, Mr. Joydeep Rai, Chief Consular Officer, Honorary Consul of Poland in Kolkata, and Vice Chairman of Imami Group, and the speakers, Helena Marlewicz from Poland, Iona Milvesk from Poland, Professor Tapote Mukherjee from the Asiatic Society, and in absentia Professor Dr. Srikant Bahulkar from the Pune University. On behalf of the Asiatic Society and on behalf of the organizers from the Poland part, I express sincere gratitude and thanks to all of you for your kind presence in this seminar webinar.